Without much ado, it is time to start engaging our esteemed guest, lawyer, social critic. Most people will also refer to him as the gadfly of our time, Dele Farotimi, on the myriad challenges confronting Nigeria's current effort at pulling off a successful electoral exercise after the not too pleasant experience of the 2019 general election. Good morning, Mr. Farotimi. Good to have you join us this morning.
Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Thanks for having me. Good morning, Abby.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Fine, fine indeed. Thank you very much. Well, let's start on the note of preparedness for the 2023 general elections. The campaigns will start in earnest in a few days' time, at least for the presidential one. And by October, everything will start. People will be on the field. It won't just be sensitization rallies anymore. Campaigns will start in earnest. But then in terms of the trust in Inec and the preparedness, what's your assessment so far before we go into the campaigns? I'm aware, of course, like other Nigerians, that 24 Nigerians have sued the electoral body over, the issues about 7 million voters looking like they will be denied the opportunity to vote, having not been able to complete their registration. Do you think that this signifies a cause for worry, or are you satisfied with the preparation so far that Inec has made towards the 2023 general elections?
I think the first thing we all have to agree on is that unlike 2019, the lead up to which was largely attended by voters' apathy, the level of engagement this time around is completely different. There hasn't been anything close to this since 1999. I can say that having participated as a voter in all but a couple in that time. And when you speak to the preparedness or otherwise of Inec, I think largely Inec could have done much better than it has, but that's also a function of how it views its task. If an electoral body sees its job as being to ensure that as many voters as possible gets to vote, then it will work towards the simplification of the process of registration and even the balloting itself. But it would appear that our own INEC is not particularly prepared for citizens' participation in what we call our democracy. So it has struggled to do the most basic. I'm not surprised that it is already dogged by suits. And I am happy that you are seeing these suits because it also shows the level of voters' awareness, involvement, and readiness to participate in the 2023 elections. It's unlikely we would have a perfect situation. But I am hopeful that before that election time would come, as much as possible, INEC should be able to read the tea leaves and understand that this is not going to be the usual election. When it comes to just exactly how 2023 might be a different ball game, I think once upon a time, these political campaigns were usually held in stadiums, and then they will call their favorite DJ or musician, and he will sing, and then you see old men doing breakdance to prove just how strong and virile they are. And then they will go home, they will wave brooms, they will wave umbrella, they wave different things, but those were the two prominent ones. And then at the end of the day, the party structures would come into play, and those would be sufficient to ensure who gets to declare itself the winner, or the judiciary would eventually have to deal because of the murky waters that everybody had to swim in during what was called election. But this time around, it's already becoming clear that this is going to be election unusual. I saw the 4 children's tweeting from the street of Abuja yesterday. I'm not sure you can pack those ones into a stadium somewhere and simply call a DJ and not explain to them exactly what you want to do with the future. Because what 2023 is about, really, is about what we want to do with the future, whether we want to throw it away or whether we want to interrogate all the maladies that we have normalized and then seek to find ways to drag ourselves out of it. So I think that's what 2023 will be about. And I think to a very large extent, you are not likely to see a repeat of 2019 where you had about 27 point something million voting, I believe, out of a voting population of 81 million, which meant that you had about only a third of the electorate engaged sufficiently to vote. And that is in spite of widespread malpractices. So 2023, with electronic transmission of results from the polling booth, which is the minimum, the Inec must, at a minimum, because without that, there is no point having an election. We might as well just allow Inec to write his usual things. But this time around, the key reason why most of us have become invested in the process is because we believe that if you are transmitting results from the polling booth, it then becomes almost impossible for you to do the usual manipulations that would happen at the collation center. So there is a level of voters' confidence in the process promised, and we are hoping that INEC will come through with it, because without that, there's really no point in having an election. We might as well stop fooling ourselves once and for all. But with electronic transmission, the game changes. Nigerians are better engaged. I'm expecting to see at least a doubling of the last electoral numbers. I'm expecting to see a doubling of that. The youth are engaged, and that constitutes the largest voting bloc. And it's their lives, not the lives of men in their 80s and 70s, presuming to tell us what the future looks like. I think that should have sufficiently answered the question.
Yes, it does, it does. Now, well, beyond the preparedness of INEC, let's get your overall assessment of the presidential candidates and hopefuls we have ahead of next year's general elections, and what visa option signifies for the future of the country.
You see, Abby, there is something that amazes me about Nigeria and our rulers. And it is the disconnect between the future that the youth population is looking to go and the race into medieval times that our rulers appear intent on running. You're dealing with a population that you have told that they are citizens of the world. They own tomorrow. Even though some of them might not have traveled into Europe and America, the liberalization of Dubai visa made it quite possible for quite a number of them to travel into Dubai. So they are even seeing a better version of westernization that has not completely destroyed the local culture. So they're seeing the best of two worlds, the Arabic world and what the West and East could bring into a developmental space. And they go into Dubai and they see people who have only single heads on their necks. And they see that they read the stories, because unlike we who have deliberately killed the educational system to the point where the youth really do not know our history any longer, because those who destroyed yesterday are still the ones who are ruling today. So they've made sure that history is not taught. But when they go into Dubai, they read the history of how they built the place from a desert into what it's become today, much better than even the West, whom they were aping originally. So these children, 4 of whom were tweeting in a room, they quickly realized that life could be much better than it is for them. They see the way people are treated in other parts by the law enforcement agencies. So they come back to Nigeria. Some of them started piercing their hairs, having dreadlocks. They even presume to engage with alternative Western cultures until SARS pulled them up. And then they started understanding that they might be citizens of the world, but they are not citizens in their own country. Now, for long, this was repressed. And then some of them who have traveled to the Western world because their parents sold things, not that they were rich, but to get them away from the poverty in the educational system in Nigeria that was already being deliberately destroyed. Some of them went off into Europe. The Japa culture began. Those who can run away have run away. Those who are still able to run away are busy in the queue to run away. They don't even call it immigration anymore. Sheon got it right the other day. They are escaping. Japa, they are running. But some people can't run. They are not stupid. They see what the world looks like. They can't run. They're not going to go anywhere. And you've offered them a way out. You've said to them that there is an electoral process. That electoral process next year, it will shock some people because the youth are engaged and they are the ones who vote. You are either going to misdirect their energy or you are going to positively direct it. Now they have been presented with choices. It's not just the presidency. That's one of the biggest errors we make. This is not just about the presidency. It's from council law, when that time comes, all the way to the presidency. The persons in the state houses of assemblies matter. Those who will be in the governor's lodges matters. Those who are going to the House of Reps, the Senate, and ultimately the presidency, they matter. But since you've asked and we are particularizing to the presidency, I have had occasion to address the candidacy of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Vice President Atiku. These, in my own opinion, are old men. The scripture says that old men shall dream dreams and young men shall see visions. They have not done anything, as far as I'm concerned, in any sphere, and we can begin to deal with specifics, to suggest to me that they have the capacity to lead Nigeria into the future that it needs to urgently go into. I've had occasion to mention the fact that the current regime in power in Nigeria has more or less destroyed hope. The country has never been more fragmented. All the old fault lines have been opened up. And in the midst of the hopelessness in this space, it's become almost impossible for anyone to persuade sufficient numbers of Nigerians about the preservation of where we are. So it has to be about where we are going. If it has to be about where we are going, it has to be young persons who have the capacity to imagine a different future, even though you must always have your narrative, because if you are just talking about ideals without relativity, it becomes impossible to get the people galvanized. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, the obedient movement is doing its job sufficiently. The young men and women who have invested their hopes in Mr. Peter Obi, they've invested. It's not, the man know they give shishi. He has said it severally. But people are sprouting up from the 4 children in the sitting room. They are getting up and they are making their voices heard. And they are making it clear that they are investing their hopes. It's about hope, because in reality, hope is the only thing that we have lost in Nigeria. Hope in the capacity of our rulers to imagine a different direction. But this man has come, he's offered that hope. He's not Voltron, he's not God, and he's definitely not going to be infallible. But it is not about his person. It is about the ideals that he will set forth, or that he has set forth, the life that he had lived, that will make enough people believe, if they do believe, and then they come together, invest these hopes in a man. If the man fumbles, is not about the man, it's about the ideas that we would all have stood behind. If that man fumbles, another man takes the baton. The reality is that we need to be traveling in a different direction. And a large percentage of the Nigerian youth have shown clearly and are showing clearly all over the country that they know the direction they want to travel, not the direction that we have traveled all these years. It's the same direction. The two, Mr. Atiku, Mr. Tinubu, they are mirror images. It's like different sides of the same coin. So for me, I have only one candidate in the coming race, and I appear to be the fourth of the four children tweeting in the bedroom somewhere.
All right, Mr. Farotimi. I like the fact that you made reference to the tweeting in the room in Abuja. And of course, everybody saw what happened, including the coming out of a newly wedded couple to join that train. But I'm interested in your thoughts around the Obidati rally that is proposed for Lagos. I'm interested in your thoughts because of the fact that it is in court. 2 days ago, the judge did say that there will be accelerated hearing so that the suit can be determined before the 1st of October. My point is, will you be in support of, when that rally happens in Lagos, that it has to be at the very space where NSAS protest was the most vociferous in Lagos, at the Lekki toll gate? Don't you think, from what the lawyers who took them to court are saying, that it will bring back horrific memories of what happened in 2020, and that it might lead to a degeneration of law and order? What will be your thoughts around that? And if that does not happen, which direction do you think that the proposed Obidati rally will take in Lagos?
You know, it's amazing how shameless we have become as a people. It's completely shameless. I know as a fact that the Obidati movement have no intention of having a rally at the Lekki toll gate. I wouldn't even support the politicization of the Lekki toll gate. Let's be very, very clear about that. I spoke with traumatized survivors in the immediate aftermath of the NSAS massacre. And one consistent story that I heard from about 4 different ones was the fact that certain young men died that night who knew they were going to die. They simply stood up so that they will become part of the history of how Nigeria changed on that evening. That's not about politics. If anyone seeks to politicize Lekki toll gate, the person would actually be facing the wrath of God. That is not a place for politics. It's hallowed ground. Men died that night whose graves would never be known because the Nigerian state has deemed it so. So for anyone to presume to politicize Lekki toll gate is below the belt. So I know as a fact that there was no such intention. There might be groups seeking to commemorate the day who might be having their own plans for some commemorative rally or candlelit, something. I don't know about that, but I do know as a fact that the Obidati movement have no intention of having a political rally at Lekki toll gate. I'm aware that they are planning their rally, but certainly not for Lekki toll gate. It's even on the mainland, as far as I am aware. So it becomes rather simplistic for anyone to say that they are suing the Obidati movement for planning to hold a rally. It's just political noise. But it's just painful that anyone should think that Lekki toll gate should become a place. It's part of how what we have become, really, that somebody... Anyway, when we keep denying what has become impossible to deny, even when a judicial panel of inquiry has established the veracity of the claims of massacre, why wouldn't somebody think that it's a good idea to further? I really have very few kind words to say about the persons who have done this. So I would prefer to just end it like that, that yes, there will be a march in Lagos or a rally of some sort, but it's definitely not at the Lekki toll gate. And that we have become, how is it that Lagos has become the place where governorship candidates cannot have their billboards up there? All kinds of strong arm tactics are being used on people who might have contrary opinions to those of the Alafin of Bodilon. How come? Why is it that all these blackmails will be springing up? Let me just say this. There is no plan, was never one, for the Obidati movement to have a rally at like that would be hallowed ground. At least I'm not aware, I'm not privy to it, and I would have vehemently opposed any such plans. I'm not aware of that, and I should be, and I'm not aware.
All right. You spoke about the youth earlier, and as we all know, they are a very integral part of the electoral process. But let's speak to how truly energized the youth are in relation to voter apathy and what we expect to see at the polls next year. Do we think we're there?
Yeah. You know, for the older generation, and I'm becoming one of those, after a point where we had come to accept the failure of the Nigerian state and had taken on more and more of the roles that the state should have filled, and I'm talking about the entire systemic collapse of the Nigerian state from local to federal level. We took on the job of providing our own social services, educating our children, everybody's children, especially if you're in the urban centers like Lagos. You had to send your children to private schools, you use private hospitals. Everything became more or less privatized. You sink your own boreholes. Our generation became permissive of the failure of governance, and we just got on with it. And as we've become increasingly old, and we're now having to get ever more expensive forex to pay for university educations because the system has failed and all of us didn't think about rescuing the system, it's become more and more clear to all of us that there is a high price to pay for the failure of governance. So I think already you have that generation better energized than ever before. Maybe not voting for the right issues, but definitely energized. And now you asked specifically about the youth. As I said, in 2019, you had a total of 27 million and then some voting in the presidential election. Out of a voting register, I think 81 million. That's a third. That's appallingly low. And it is so because the people were disconnected. Between then and now, we have had NSAS. Nothing has advertised the nature of the Nigerian state better than NSAS. And NSAS was merely the culmination of a chain of events. That awakened the Nigerian youth because they then suddenly realized that they are dealing with a state that has discounted their lives. Generally, that their lives really don't matter. They saw it graphically because it's the electronic age. All you need is a phone, an Android or whatever. You can see the world. And a lot of things went on here. A lot of things were seen. Government was busy denying, wearing its fig leaf in the marketplace. Obviously, it didn't work. Last, the Nigerian state was denuded in the marketplace. And then they saw the response of the political system during the COVID. They saw how COVID palliatives were hoarded, became party souvenirs for honorables' birthdays. They saw all of that. They saw the dehumanization of the Nigerian all through the COVID things. They saw how people starved, insecurity mounted. They saw all of that. So my people have one proverb in Yoruba land. They say, "Tiya obati kari kokin to gbon," until the suffering is democratized. It is really time to throw off the chains. Nigeria has democratized suffering. The people in Kankara, they are Fulani Muslims, but they suffered the scourge of banditry. They suffered it just as much as those in the Benue Trough. It's the Hausa and the Fulani in Zamfara. People are killing themselves all over the country because the social fabric is disintegrating, and the state itself appears to be a facilitator from local government level to the federal government level. So there is a general failure of governance. These are young persons who can understand that with better governance, their country is not a place to flee from. Those who have said this to themselves are probably those who can afford to flee but have elected not to flee. And then those who can't go anywhere, they are looking everywhere, looking for some hope. So 2023 represents a watershed moment in the history of Nigeria. We are at an inflection point, and there's going to be a clash of visions. Those who want us to be the way we are, and those who want us to travel in a different direction. That inflection point is assuring that a lot of people who would ordinarily have been disengaged from the system are engaged. Registration went to unbelievable levels because people took it upon themselves to offer hope to the Nigerian youth that, look, it doesn't have to be violent. If they will not allow peaceful demonstrations to work, why not get your PVCs? It's either your PVC or your gun. We don't want you carrying guns. Go and get your PVCs. So we invested time, got people convinced that they should get their PVCs. So a lot of young men and women, there are people like Yemi Adam Olekun or VIE, they were busy making campaigns. A lot of people, Macaroni, campaigning for people to get their PVC, Banki. A lot of people went out there, Emma, M1, people went out there, got people basket mouth. They went out there, got people to register to vote. The politicians, of course, would imagine that, yes, now our votes will not count because we will dissipate our energies as usual. Nobody factored in a renegade from amongst their own ranks, breaking ranks with them and coming into a movement that, by divine orchestration, had been gathering steam long before he showed up. So you have an energized youth-led movement. Did I say youth-led? You don't even know who is leading who, because some of these rallies, you just find one support group saying, okay, let's have a rally, and then they start calling out to each other. That is the same organic growth you saw during NSAS. Some of us didn't even know who started it and where it was started from, but people got caught up in it because of the ideals. So the Obidati movement is really about an ideal. It's about an ideal, a different direction. So you'll find that clash of vision in the coming election. Hopefully and prayerfully, Inec would be the impartial umpire that it should be. The Nigerian security forces would understand that it's our common future, and they will be the impartial umpires and enforcer of laws that they also should be. But I am excited about what is coming in 2023. It is obvious that it's not going to be business as usual. The Nigerians have just generally decided that they want to travel a different direction.
Okay.
Hope have very delicate wings, but we'll ride it. Let's fly on it.
Absolutely. Well, let's move quickly a bit to something slightly different. How all this will affect people in terms of their ethnic identities and how they engage with the candidates. I know that all the candidates are talking national unity. They're talking, about Nigeria. But then you can't remove the fact that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a Yoruba candidate. Peter Obi is an Igbo candidate. And both Atiku and Kwakwanso, to mention just the 4 leading candidates, are from the Fulani stock in the north. But you know, Mr. Farotimi, that there's an addition to the political lexicon in Nigeria in all this. And that's what's it called again? Ohanifere. The Ohanize and the Afenifere thing, Ohanifere, which basically says that the Yorubas can work with the Igbos, the socio-political groups, the 2 of them. And it looks like their interest is to work for the actualization of Peter Obi as the president. Well, there has been a lot of back and forth from those who are in support and those who are against, particularly against the person of Chief Elder Statesman Ayo Adebanjo. What's your view on this Ohanifere movement? And what do you think, what role will people play, especially those who stand up and say, yes, I'm from an ethnic stock of a particular candidate, but my preference, my choice, for certain reasons, is for another person. Do you think that this will be a welcome development? And how will the opposition be from those who disagree vehemently with the whole idea of Ohanifere?
Okay. For the sake of full disclosures, I am a member of the National Caucus of Afenifere, and I am also a co-opted member of his National ESCO when it is expanded. So the Ohanifere, I think that's how they are called. Ohanifere is just laughable, really. Ohanifere is actually quite laughable, but I'll take it from one anecdote based on factual anecdote that my leader, Chief Ayo Adebanjo, has shared with a few of us, and has actually shared in a meeting we had with Ohaneze sometime back. And it was of a campaign rally that Chief Obafemi Awolowo went for in Aba. Yeah, it was in Aba, and I believe it was in 1957 or thereabout. We went there for an election campaign. And when they got back to their base, as was usual with Chief Obafemi Awolowo, you had to do a post-mortem of the day's event. And Papa told them that, see these Igbo people, we have no choice, we have to work with them, because if we don't work with them, we will end up commonly enslaved. And he removed his cap, the first cap that the Baba used to wear, and he showed them a bloodied part of his head. He was stoned at the rally in Aba. But people didn't realize that that the stone hit him at all, but he was partially protected. Whilst he was busy rubbing his wound, he was telling his lieutenants that you have to work with the Igbo or will be commonly enslaved. This was the basis of engagement at all points in time, because we understand very clearly that the handshake across the Niger is not just empty talk. It is something that must happen if Nigeria is to ever become the dream of its founders, which was that nobody should be enslaved by any part, and all of us should be able to develop at our own pace based on true federalism. When we work at cross purpose with each other, we have been mutual losers. So that some people are talking Ohanifere. Yeah, there is indeed an Ohanifere, and it is about finding ways to work better together. But to now deal with the specificity of Afenifere's focus on supporting Peter Obi, a candidate of Igbo extraction, is not based on his ethnicity. It is based on the doctrine of equity, justice, and inclusiveness. Nigeria was found based on what was called federal principles. And it was also said clearly that federal character should apply in all offices in Nigeria. That's not something that emerged with PDP. It was there before independence. It was part of why the North felt sufficiently comfortable to agree to become part of the Nigeria that emerged in 1960. Those were guarantees and assurances that they sought at independence. So when we now came to the 1999 part, because now you've taken Nigeria away from the federating regions where each person could go and build their region as they care, you've unilaterally restructured it into a federalist behemoth where it's not really a federation any longer, but it has become something clearly unrecognizable from what it was at its birth. So today, you now said, we are going to be zoning the presidency. Principle. You now decided that we in the Southwest should get the first go. So Obasanjo became president. The North came after. Obasanjo took the southern slot. The North came after. Yar'Adua died. Jonathan took over, spent 6 years. Power went back to the North. After 8 years of Buhari, power is meant to come back to the South. The North has the Northeast, the Northwest, and the North Central. The South has the South-South, the Southwest, and the Southeast. Power had stayed 8 years with a Yoruba man in Obasanjo for all the good that did the Yorubas. Power has stayed 8 years, or would have stayed 8 years by 2023, with another Yoruba man as the vice president. In all of this, no Igbo man. Now we are we're going into 2023. Yorubas will say, Afari igun ayok gege akala, wa dori ati oro elabeku. Why is it that it is when it is the turn of the Southeast to take its own turn at the table of Nigerian impunity? Because that is what it is. You suddenly realize that the zoning arrangement no longer works. Afenifere is about principle. It's about standing by the truth. It's about making sure that posterity remembers where we stood in times when men might prefer to keep quiet or succumb to base instincts of ethnicity or religion. We are not for that. We're about principle, which is why from the beginning of Afenifere till date, the principles by which Afenifere has stood, which is federalism, has remained the point of departure between Nigeria and sanity. The moment we jettisoned federalism and we remodeled Nigeria into the behemoth that it has become today, the further we have walked away from federalism, the further we have walked away from sanity and development. That is because the position of Afenifere is rooted in truth. When you have truthful principles, it becomes impossible for anyone to assail. It might not be popular in the moment, but time will prove you to be correct. If we say, because it is convenient for us today, and somebody is saying, Emi lo kan, and on the basis of that, we are saying that we are supporting the person because he's a Yoruba person, when it is now truly established that zoning does not matter any longer, and then a Yoruba man is now shouting about zoning, what do you expect the Igbo man or any other man, whether the North Central or any part? Because we would have become complicit and part of the breach of that basic principle of decency if you have already destroyed the federalist basis. But you then introduce zoning. Why is it now that it suddenly becomes impossible to stay on the path of truth? So Afenifere's position has nothing to do with the person of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. No. When it comes to issue of persons, those are matters you deal with at the level of campaign. But we're saying that in this, he's not the only Yoruba person in the race. Omoyele Sowore is Yoruba. The gentleman in SDP is Yoruba. We could be supporting any one of those, but it's not about persons. It's about the principle, the truth. So the Ohanifere is a welcome development We are hoping to move beyond the handshake to inviting ourselves into each other's sitting rooms, dining rooms, and have healthy dialogues with ourselves. That is what it's about. So it's not about ethnicity, it's about principles.
All right, very well noted, Mr. Farotimi. I just hope, of course, that if perchance your candidate, Mr. Obi, wins, his candidacy will at least put a stop to all the agitations, IPOB, Yoruba Nation, etc. Unfortunately, we do not have time to exhaust that aspect of...
No, but I'll just like a short, a very short...
In
worry,
30 seconds, please. Yes, in 30 seconds.
See, thank you. The only reason you have agitations, separatist agitations, are because people do not see a path forward, traveling the direction we are traveling. If you give them sufficient basis to believe that there will be a different path, you might see a lot of these agitations pipe down, but we just can't continue the way we are. That's what's fueling the agitations.
All right. On that note, so many questions and very many issues to explore around that. But I want to thank you very much, Mr. Dele Farotimi, lawyer and political activist, for joining us this morning, discussing all matters surrounding next year's general elections.